Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brewer fans, welcome to another episode of the Brew Crew Review Podcast. Joining me, my name's Craig, and joining me is my co-host Vince Travato. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Craig. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. Do we have Scott or Chad on this one?
No, I guess not. Last I heard, Chad joined a traveling circus, and last time I heard from Scott, he said he was traveling to Guatemala, and that he had to begrudgingly leave his the love of his life, his little dog, with a bunch of rodeo clowns, and he wasn't very comfortable with it, but he's living life. So
he does love to travel. I bet he's camping down there, but all right, fair enough.
He does love camping and baseball for sure.
Yep.
All right. So I know all our longtime listeners have always probably tuned into our television show and our podcast over the years to get all of our farm reports, which started way back in the day as kind of one of the catalysts for our show. Back when the show started in 2004, our major league roster wasn't necessarily up to snuff. However, we did have we were starting to grow our minor league system at the time, and obviously have been along with a lot of minor league road trips with us throughout the years as viewers, coming along for those eventers. So luckily in the last 5 years, the Brewers have been contenders every single year. And so I guess the focus on the farm system has not been quite like it used to be, which is usually a good thing. However, it does sure seem like the Brewers have not been trading away their prospects to try to, actually make it far into the playoffs or even into the playoffs. So instead, they've been keeping them. So a lot of these guys on the list are actually on the cusp of helping the team at this juncture. So that's kind of exciting. And of course, not all these prospects work out. Yep. If you followed our top 30 future Brewers list over the years that our minor league analyst Brandon, my brother, has been putting together.
Craig, I don't want to interrupt, but what would you say is like the biggest miss that we've had on this show? I know we've had some hits too, for sure, but I do think it's kind of fun to look back and kind of.
Well, I do remember having an argument with Brandon. I don't remember what year it was, but I'll guess like 2006 or 7, where he was adamant about ranking Zach Jackson, a left-handed pitcher who was on the cusp of the majors at the time, over Ryan Braun, who I kind of felt was a better prospect. I mean, turns
out you were right.
The jury's still out, but anyway.
I don't know. We did get CC Sabathia for Zach Jackson. If you recall, Jackson was I would say a little bit more, but not much more than a throw-in in that trade. That also included Mickey Brantley and Matt Laporta.
Okay. Yeah, that worked out for the Brewers for sure. But without further ado, Brandon has provided us with the current top 30 future Brewers list. And there'll be a surprise at the very top because we have one of the best prospects in all of baseball toward the top of our list. So let's start off 30-1. I'll go through these as quickly as I can. I know that I'm under a pitch clock now, so I'll try to go as fast and leave out a little bit of the details. But all right. Number 30th top 30 future Brewers is our 4th round pick from last year, catcher Matthew Wood. I'm gonna also mention, instead of their age, the year that they finished off through our minor league system last year. So give our listeners an idea of how close they are to helping out in the majors. So that's Matthew Wood. He played a rookie ball last year. Number 29, shortstop Eduardo Garcia. He played at high A. Number 20 in our list is actually a January 15th international signee. He got a $1.5 million signing bonus, and that's shortstop Yoferi Rodriguez. So he's brand new to the system. 27th overall is left-handed pitcher Russell Smith from high A. 26th on the list, outfielder Yeson Perez from rookie ball. 25th on the list was shortstop Johan Barrios from rookie ball as well. 24th on the list is former catcher and now third baseman Xavier Warren, Double A. 23rd on the list, right-handed pitcher Abner Uribe from Double A. 22nd on the list, shortstop Freddie Zamora, also made it to AA last year. 21st on the list, outfield Joe Gray Jr., made it to AA last year. 20th on the list, we've got right-handed pitcher Carlos Rodriguez. He also made it to high A. Number 19 on the list, outfielder Luis Lara from rookie ball. 18th on the list, right-handed pitcher Logan Henderson from single A. And then 17th on the list is someone we acquired in the Hunter Renfroe trade, and that's right-handed pitcher Jansen Junk, who has made it to the major leagues already, but he's still qualifies as a prospect. 16th on the list, we've got second baseman Felix Valerio, made it to AA. 15th on the list, we've got outfielder Henry Mendez, single A. Number 14 is someone who shot quite a bit up this list from outside the top 30 all the way to 14. That's outfielder Jace Avina, single A, former international signee. 13th on the list, left-handed pitcher Ethan Small, who did make it to the majors last year as a starter. Looks like he's being converted to the bullpen here during the spring training, it seems. 12th on the list, someone who fell in the draft last year and we got in the second round, and that's, or I believe third round, second baseman Robert Moore, at the single A, drafted out of college. And 11th on the list, catcher Jefferson Cuero, high A last year. 10th on the list, second baseman Tyler Black, high A also last year. Number 9 on this list, someone Brandon's still pretty high on, and that's outfielder Edbert Perez. He made it to single A last year and kind of struggled a little bit, but he expects great things still from him in the future. 8th on the
Craig,
list.
what position are you in right now?
What position?
Trying to write this down. You're going a little fast. Yeah. What number?
Oh, I only have like 8 seconds left on the pitch clock, so I'm about ready to throw here. So
what position you have?
It's
what position you have Perez ranked at?
Gotta get in the batter's box, Vince. So yeah, that was number 9. Now I'm on number 8. Right-handed pitcher Jacob Mizarowski. He made it to single A last year. A very high upside right-handed pitcher with, in my opinion, number 1 starter upside, but still with no command. Drafted him last year. Okay, now we get to the top 7 on our list, and a lot of these guys are on the cusp of helping the big league club. So number 7 on the list, outfielder Joey Weimer from AAA. Number 6 on the list, middle infielder Bryce Terang, also made it to AAA and had a nice season last year. Number 5 on Brandon's list is shortstop Eric Brown Jr., who made it to high A last year. He was our number 1 pick last year, and if I'm not mistaken, you actually were able to meet him, Vince.
I did. I watched actually like 3 innings of a game with him last year, an extra inning game in Milwaukee when Lena and I were up there. So yeah, we had a nice night with him.
Very awesome. And then number 4 on our list, left-handed pitcher Robert Gasser. He made it to AAA and had a nice season last year. He came over from the Padres in the Josh Hader trade. Number 3 on the list, most likely your 2023 starting center fielder on the Milwaukee Brewers, and that's outfielder Garrett Mitchell, former first-round pick. He did make it to the Brewers last year, and Brewers are really going to be calling on him this season and going forward. Number 2 on Brandon's list, and someone who he really is high on, and Brandon said he struggled. He almost wanted to put him number 1 overall, but that's Sal Frelick, who went to AAA last year and hit like over 350 in a limited number of games, short sample. But this is a kid that is a future. Brandon calls him a future leadoff hitter, and he calls him the Igniter 2.0, whatever that means. He feels that he's going to be a leadoff hitter in Milwaukee for like 10 plus years. So we'll see. Sal Frelick, he should be making his major league debut sometime this season, I assume, after a little bit more minor league seasoning. And then number 1 on the list, and someone who shot all the way from off this ranking to number 1, and that's former international signee, outfielder, left-handed batting Jackson Trio, who made it across many levels last year, all the way to AA as an 18-year-old. He's going to be 19 this season, and there's counsel has even came out in a press conference and said he wouldn't be surprised if this kid makes his major league debut later in this season as a 19-year-old, which hasn't been done by a teenager, I believe, since Robin Yount as a Milwaukee Brewer. I'm pretty sure on that. So that's pretty exciting. He's ranked pretty universally in the top 5 of all prospects throughout baseball, Jackson Trio. going into this season. So I think we have a pretty solid farm system overall, especially with, loaded at the top with guys that are on the cusp of being, in my opinion, major leaguers. And we also have some high upside guys down on and some other major league contributors on this list, I believe. But overall, what is your take on Brandon's list?
Well, it was kind of interesting. I was going to ask you a little bit. I received a list as well. I know Brandon had circulated ours in the pre-production meeting, and Sky's interns had put together another list. But our anonymous source, Tom Carter, had given me a list that he put Hedbert Perez at number 18. Who, obviously in Tom Carter's assessment, Hedbert had fallen quite a bit compared to where he was ranked last year. And I'm wondering if maybe you and Brandon had talked a little bit more about why Perez is still ranked so highly on his list compared to our anonymous source, Tom Carter's.
Yeah, we did have a discussion about that, and Hedbert Perez has fallen out of probably about the top 5 of the Brewer prospects of last season, and the most universal, prospect evaluators outside the Brewers top 10 list. But Brand felt that he's given us a little bit of a mulligan for last year, and still feels that he has enormous upside, and he thinks he's going to be a 2020 player, at least at the major league level. Obviously, there's a low floor where he could flame out and not make it all at all. But he thinks that the difference between Jackson Chourio and Hedbert Perez is not that large. He does think Jackson Chourio will be a better overall hitter and probably someone who can, be like a 25 homer, 25 steal plus guy at the major league level. But he thinks Hedbert is not that far behind. And he actually gives them both almost an equal chance of making it. And Hedbert Perez was only 19 years old last year. He'll be 20 this year, so he's still young enough to to make it through the system. So Brandon left him ranked in the top 10, and I didn't totally disagree with him. I think that's I still feel that he has a higher upside than some of the other prospects just below him on the list. As we see,
I would tend to agree. I just think that, especially like you said, given his age, he's still such a young guy, and guys who are coming out of foreign countries are they're just developed a little bit differently. It's not like the guys that come out of college here who might have had a bad freshman or sophomore year, but nobody even remembers it after a good junior and senior year. So it's kind of interesting, but was just kind of curious as to what Brandon had said versus Tom.
Yeah. So Brandon also is really high on Eric Brown, higher than I think some other evaluators, and he feels he's going to have a great hit tool, even though he has a kind of a funky swing, almost like Craig Counsell-esque looking batting stance, so to speak. But he was really high on him. And as far as
stolen base potential for Brown as well, looking through some of these numbers, Brown had 19 stolen bases last year.
Yeah, he's a really solid player coming out of Coastal Carolina, I believe, out of college. Yeah. So it's not going to take him too long to reach the major leagues. It might be, and they think he's going to stick at shortstop too. He plays a really good defensive shortstop. So again, God forbid that we'd actually lose Willie Adames before he's due for free agency at the end of 2024 as well. It should almost line up in Eric Brown's timeline whether or not he'd make it to the major leagues at that time and help contribute.
Yeah.
But of course, Bryce Frank might be able to help out at the shortstop position or somewhere in the middle infield as well. But so it's nice to have this depth and these guys that are ready to, almost ready to help out at the major league level for sure. Especially for, I guess the thing that's really stark to me, besides having apparently a cheap owner, is the fact that we are in a small market. I mean, and so we really are holding tight to our prospects, guys that we can control at a cheap level for a number of years once they break through. And I feel that the Brewers, in my opinion, should have quote unquote went for it and traded away guys like Ethan Small the last couple of years, instead of now they're just going to become a middle reliever or a back end starter. Whereas we could have probably, really upgraded our roster either the last 2 years and try to make a deeper run into the playoffs or whatever. Instead we held on to everyone. And some of those things might come in, maybe we had some offers out there where we'd have to part with Sam Frelick that we passed up. And that would have been probably a good thing in the long run. So again, it's tough to be a backseat driver to our GM and the way that they're running the team. But it sure seems that they were really holding tight to a lot of these prospects and not willing to give up any real good ones in trades over the last couple of years. And instead, we even brought some guys on, like Robert Gasser into the system And even, so I
Monty
guess
Harrison too.
that's where we're at. So I guess we're going to have a youth movement here in 2023. It really feels, I know Tyrone, just some more updates for viewers onto this podcast, that Tyrone Taylor has been diagnosed, I think, with a strained shoulder, and he's going to miss at least the first month of the season. And I know he was pretty much going to be, if not platooning, almost assured a starting spot in our outfield, right field, going into 2023. So that's no longer the case. So I think this almost solidifies that Garrett Mitchell will make the opening day roster as our center fielder. And as far as how we handle right field, Sam Frelick could play there. Most likely we're going to have Jesse Winker and Brian Anderson play there until Tyrone Taylor is healthy. We brought some other guys into camp, like Tyler Naquin, and I know we have some other guys like Blake Perkins or whatever, and I think I even saw Sky Bolt was on the roster, but I don't think any of these guys will necessarily make it on the team, but you never know. So that is an update that, unfortunately, Tyrone Taylor, who had a pretty nice year both of the last 2 years when given the opportunity to play, was showing himself. I always kind of figured he'd be like a fourth or fifth outfielder, but he showed himself that he maybe could be an everyday starter last year and would have had that opportunity going in this year. So it's really unfortunate timing of the injury for him.
Yeah. Yep, that's for sure. I guess I'm trying to get a little bit of a gauge on Brandon's look at this list and how many of these guys might actually make the big leagues this year, would you say, if you had the handicap? Obviously, a lot of these guys are lower level minor league guys, but if you're looking at, this out of this top 30 list, what do you think? If you had to, what's the over under on this? I'll say 5. You're going to take the over or the under?
That's about right. So that's tough. Yeah, I was going to say I'll take the under, I guess, but it'll probably be right around 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
obviously guys like Mitchell. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you count, Mitchell's already made his debut, so I guess if you count him, maybe it'll be the over then. But for sure, obviously Mitchell for sure. I think Sam Frelick's almost like a shoe-in for sure, so that's 2 for sure. Bryce Trang's almost.
Let's actually, Craig, let's define this really quick. I think the barometer is guys who appear on the 2023 Milwaukee Brewers. How about that?
Yeah, I think from this list there'll be 6. Whether I'm right or not, I don't know. Well, actually, and it might even be, okay, for sure, Ethan Small, for sure, Garrett Mitchell, and for sure, Sal Frelick. So that's 3 right off the top. Probably for sure, Bryce Trang, so that's 4. I think Robert Gasser will at least get some major league debut probably in September.
Yep. I got Weimer making his big league debut this year too. I think
Joey Weimer will probably make it at some point. Again, it would all depend on need. So then the unknown. So that gets us over 5 for sure. And then the unknown, like Council said, maybe Jackson Trio at the cup of coffee at the end of the year.
Well, Trio, it could be. I actually think that both Junk and Gasser will be Brewers at some point this season as well.
Yeah, so Junk too. So yeah, I guess I'm going to take the over on the 5. Now I guess I wasn't counting those guys who have already made the major league debuts. Junk did make his major league debut last year with the Angels, and Small with us, and Garrett also. So not counting those guys, I would have took the under on 5, but with those guys included, I'd take the over for sure. So there'll be an influx of talent for sure this year.
Yeah. So what are your odds of Churio actually making the big leagues this season? Do you think that he will?
If I had to bet on it, I'd say no. Just because I hope the Brewers are contending in September and they're not dinking around with the roster. I mean,
yeah, but even though the rosters do expand, so it's not unheard of for guys to come up at that point. And I did have Scotty's interns do a little research. Gary Sheffield did come up at age 19 in 1988. Okay. Brewers pick. He was 19 years old.
So it's only been a handful of guys. Again, I think that for service time reasons, unless they absolutely needed him due to injury or something, or I would think that they would hold him down until at least the start of next year. Again, we'll see. I hope he's as good as people think that he is. I think that he might have a little bit less of a good year this year than last year overall, because he's gonna be facing tougher pitching at AA and AAA than he's ever seen before, and it's really tough for 19-year-olds to have success at those levels. But if he's truly has superstardom in his future, then he'll succeed. So let's all wish for the best.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And then progress too. I do think it might be a mistake for the Brewers to rush him a little bit early. I think he does need to make sure to get the proper coaching and development that he, would get if he was anyone else going through the minor leagues to a point. I think there's a fine line that needs to be watched, and that between a guy putting in enough time to develop properly and holding him back too long. You could say that some of these guys probably should have already made their major league debuts. I think that Bryce Trang has proven that he's ready at this point. I think that there were a couple guys. Mitchell probably came up at about the right time. I mean, he had a little bit of weird circumstances given that he was our number one draft pick during the COVID year, but I like the fact that he's already turned into a contributor at the big league level this quickly.
Yeah, and he was drafted out of UCLA, I think 20th overall by the Brewers, and he was really universally projected to go in the top 10 picks. So the Brewers kind of got a steal there, and he thought he would shoot through the system. So he was definitely ready last year, as he showed, by hitting over 300 in a short sample with the Brewers. But I know the first game of spring training, I think he hit 2 bombs. So I mean, you got to be excited about a guy like that, given an opportunity at the major league level. Obviously, there'll be some struggles or whatever, but you never know. He could bust out. I mean, we all know. I don't know, put him on the same level of talent, but when Ryan Braun was a rookie, came up, he was like the best player on the team, and possibly like he almost was immediately like an MVP of the league type of player. So you just never know with those young guys with tons of talent. So.
Yeah, and he did show that talent in college too. I think that he led the Pac-12 conference in doubles, maybe the entire NCAA in doubles. We'll have to have our interns look that up. But in doubles his senior year, he's obviously got gap power. He's got power generally. He's got speed. He's a guy who certainly brings at least 4 of the 5 big talents to the table, I would say.
Yeah, and coming out of college, I kind of was comparing him a little bit to like Charlie Blackmon, who would be a great leadoff hitter with some speed, but a little bit lacking in power. But I think Mitchell is coming into his own on power. I think he could really be a 20-plus home run guy, with the stolen bases and with a pretty good average or whatnot. I mean, he has some swing, but I mean, he's definitely a solid player and a great center fielder. So.
Yeah, agreed. And power is one of those things that tends to develop, I think, a little bit later. And some of these guys, remember, your body is still growing at that age. You've got a few extra years to come into form besides just additional swings and reps that could help out. So I didn't worry too much about that with a guy like Mitchell. When you've got gap power, I think you can easily, not easily, but you can work hard and add a few feet of power to yourself, and those doubles turn into home runs pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it'll be exciting if you like watching young guys come up through the league. I mean, I know that it was either like 2 years ago where we really had no rookies, I think it was. And so obviously we had a couple last year with like Taylor and everything, but really the Brewers have been relying more on veterans and players through these contending years. So it'll be kind of fun for teams to see some of these young players coming up through the system and guys that hopefully can be Brewers for a very long time. And like Brandon, I'm really high on Sal Frelick as well, even a little bit more than Mitchell, even though it could be a toss-up. If you had to be a betting man, who would have a better career, even out of our top 3, all outfielders, Trio, Frelick, and Mitchell, it'd be a toss-up. I guess most people, based off these rankings, would pick Trio, but it's example of different types of prospects. And Trio is someone with a really high ceiling, but also a lower floor, which means he could be a superstar or he could completely flame out. Sal Frelick has a high ceiling, but a high floor, but a low ceiling, which means he's most likely for sure an everyday player, but he might just be someone that doesn't have enough power or speed to be anything more than, just someone who gets on base or whatever. And so therefore he probably doesn't have a superstar ceiling. And Garrett Mitchell is kind of a mixture of both, where he's pretty safe at this point, but he could end up being someone who's got a lot of holes in his swing and hits, under 250 or something like that, in spite of the power or speed. But with his great defense, he's still going to be a solid player regardless, in my opinion. So again, there's 3 different type of prospects there at the top of the list, and you can see the difference in, like, when people talk about ceilings and floors and whatnot, like how the prospects are different. And I think it's smart for the Brewers to hold on to guys even like Frelick, guys that are for sure major league contributors, in my opinion, because having those guys on cheap contracts will hopefully allow us to actually sign some veterans to help out this young core in the future. So we'll see.
Yep. I totally agree. It's nice that a team is able to take a balanced approach, as much as we've criticized the front office on a number of fronts, and deservedly so, I think, over the course of the last year in terms of a number of their decisions regarding free agents and trade deadline moves. I do think that it's good that we haven't completely bankrupted the system. There is some hope on the horizon. We've got these guys, under contract for 6 years once they come up to the majors. So that's certainly is a nice perk, I guess, of some questionable decisions. But here we are. So I think that we are gonna. I asked the question I did earlier because I think that it's interesting that we're going to see this combo of things this year. That you've got some good veteran talent on the team, especially in the pitching staff, but you're also going to get this influx of young guys, I think, who are going to kind of come up, and we're going to see how things mesh. And they are one way or the other. They're some of our younger outfielders, including Mitchell, including Frelick, maybe including Weimer, are all going to, I think, make or break this team this year in some ways. So it's going to be really interesting to watch how that all plays out.
Yeah, and with the Taylor injury to start the year, it really, I think, increases Bryce Strang's chances to make the 25-man or 26-man coming out of spring training, because in reality, Brian Anderson, who was probably slated and promised third base at bats when he signed, can be played in right field, especially against left-handers. And that would slide Louis Urias over from second base over to third base and open up second base for some at bats for either if we want to platoon a left-handed Terang with like someone like Keston Hiura maybe, or even Owen Miller, or depends on who makes the roster. But it'll give some more opportunities to those guys in particular to either get some starting spots in the first month of the season. And a lot of those guys need that to show whether or not A, they belong in the major leagues, or B, that they can have some type of breakthrough so they can stay on the team going forward. So, sometimes, what's that phrase? When a door shuts, a window opens, especially for some other players here on the team. So we wish Tyrone Taylor a healthy and quick recovery, but like I said, it should be an interesting 26-man roster to start off the season this year. And it is exciting, I think, going into the season. There's a lot of question marks, but overall, I think it'll be an exciting season, and the Brewers will be contending in the NL Central right from the get-go. So,
sounds great. Looking forward to seeing some meaningful baseball games. It's been enjoyable that spring training has started, and you're hearing the sound of bats and gloves again. But I'm really excited for some regular season baseball games that count, and it's exciting. Always a great time of the year.
Yeah. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks again to our minor league analyst, Brandon Miller, for providing us with that awesome list and spending all your long, really scouting these guys out. Appreciate that once again. And he'll be back, I'm sure, with some come July. Once again, the June draft is now the July draft in Major League Baseball. A lot of changes in baseball over the last couple of years. So he'll be back with a draft preview at some point in late June. So in the meantime, stay classy, Wisconsin. And you have anything to add, Vince, before we wrap her up?
Go Brewers. Yeah, how about just a go Brewers? Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Scotty. Thanks, Jack. Go Brewers.
Go Brewers.
Do, 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 do.